The Bizarre and Tragic Fate of Edward II, a Medieval Tale. The Bizarre and Tragic Fate of Edward II, a Medieval Tale. Welcome to Explore and Discover Curious World, the channel that takes you deep into the darkest and most absurd corners of human history. Today, we dive into a medieval tale that has it all: intrigue, betrayal, an unfortunate king, and a method of execution so bizarre that calling it original would be an understatement. Are you ready to uncover the tragic and excruciating fate of Edward II of England? I guarantee that after this video, you'll never look at spears the same way again. But before we begin, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Here, we don't just tell stories. We take you on a journey through time where reality is stranger than fiction. And trust me, today's story sounds like something out of a medieval horror movie written by the most twisted screenwriter imaginable. The Bizarre and Tragic Fate of Edward II, a Medieval Tale. Being born into a royal family usually means a life of privilege and a guaranteed crown. But Edward II is living proof that destiny can have other plans. Born in 1284 in Carnarvon Castle, our protagonist was never expected to rule. He was the 14th child. In theory, his biggest life choice should have been between collecting swords or hunting deer for sport. But the Middle Ages weren't exactly a time of kindness. Plague after plague wiped out his family, and one by one, his older brothers vanished from the picture. And so, against all odds, Edward ended up where no one expected, on the throne of England. Now picture this: a boy growing up without any expectations of power, probably dreaming of a peaceful life, tending crops or raising horses, suddenly being thrown into a world of political intrigue and royal responsibilities. Edward wasn't your typical medieval warrior king, all swords and armor. He loved manual labor, enjoyed the company of commoners, and most importantly, had a strong passion for intense friendships. But there was a problem. The English nobility wasn't thrilled about a king who preferred woodworking over warfare. And when Edward started forming dangerously close attachments to certain advisors, things really started to go downhill. The Bizarre and Tragic Fate of Edward II, a Medieval Tale. Enter Piers Gaveston, Edward's ultimate bestie. A charismatic, intelligent young man with a razor-sharp wit who quickly became the king's shadow. The problem? Edward showered him with favors, even giving him the queen's jewels. Now, if the nobles were already unhappy with a king more interested in farm work than military conquest, imagine how they felt when he treated his best friend better than his own wife. Gossip spread like wildfire, and soon the court was whispering that Edward and Gaveston's relationship was more than just friendship. The barons, already furious about the influence of this low-born upstart, decided they'd had enough. In 1312, they kidnapped and brutally executed Gaveston, leaving Edward devastated. But instead of learning his lesson and trying to win over the nobles, Edward did what any vengeful medieval king would do. He sought revenge. The Bizarre and Tragic Fate of Edward II, a Medieval Tale. To prove himself a strong ruler, Edward decided to take on the Scots at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. The problem? The Scots had Robert the Bruce, and Edward just had stubbornness. The result? One of the most humiliating defeats in English history. Edward fled the battlefield while his army was slaughtered. If the nobles had doubts about his leadership before, now they were absolutely certain. Their king was a walking disaster. Imagine the scene. A defeated king returning home in shame, despised by the barons and with a shattered army. But instead of rethinking his approach, Edward doubled down and aligned himself with a new favorite, Hugh Despenser. Unlike Gaveston, Despenser lacked charm and was universally hated. Yet, Edward trusted him completely, further alienating himself from the nobility. The Queen's betrayal. At this point, Queen Isabella had had enough. Tired of being sidelined in favor of dubious advisors and greedy sycophants, she decided to take matters into her own hands. And how did she do it? By teaming up with Roger Mortimer, a rebellious noble who, let's just say, was more than just a political ally. In 1326, Isabella and Mortimer invaded England, and in a ridiculously easy takeover, they captured Edward. The king was forced to abdicate and was locked away in Berkeley Castle, where his story would take the darkest turn yet. The bizarre and tragic fate of Edward II, a medieval tale. Now, if you're squeamish, you might want to skip this part. Legend has it that Edward II was assassinated in one of the most inventive and horrific ways imaginable. His captors, wanting to ensure that his death left no visible marks, allegedly chose an unconventional method. That's right, according to some accounts, they inserted a red-hot poker into his anus. Yep, you heard that correctly. If you think that sounds insane, you're not alone. Historians still debate whether this actually happened. Some believe Edward escaped and spent the rest of his days in hiding. Either way, medieval minds had a talent for cruelty worthy of a horror film. The bizarre and tragic fate of Edward II, a medieval tale. And that, my friends, is the tragic and utterly bizarre story of Edward II, the king who probably regretted being the 14th child more than anyone in history. But now I want to hear from you. If you were in Edward's shoes, would you have tried to escape or accepted your fate? Let me know in the comments. If you love stories of doomed monarchs, betrayals, and creative execution methods, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that like button. Stay tuned for more strange and fascinating tales from Explore and Discover Curious World.